The offer I found was just an exponentially simpler way to be able to get into market, way less capital intensive, and then it gives you time to build the better product.
Getting a product 10 times better is unbelievably difficult.
Because you think features will help them switch over, and then you're stuck in this loop trying to build more features to convince the market to switch.
The elements of these offers, they're like a set of elements or even a single most important element that you found that separates an offer from an irresistible one compared to like a vague one.
So is it pricing? Is it the bundling? Is it the access? It depends on the pain point. So in our market, that was the number one pain point.
All of our customers who have built all this stuff, they now charge 5, 10, 15, 20, $30,000 a year for this. Like our B2B is free and you can get started in 3 minutes, and it is dead simple to start seeing leads in Slack.
That's where most of the startups I've seen fail. Some I've started myself. So if I need someone to switch something, that's a very big, painful decision. And more often than not, they're just not going to make the decision.
Welcome back to the show. Today, we're joined by Nick Weldon. Nick is the founder of the 5x5 Data Co-op. Nick achieved a strategic private equity deal and is here to tell us how you can win with a shitty product if you have a great offer. Nick, welcome to the show, my friend.
Oh, thanks for having me.
I mean, shitty product, we're customers. I wouldn't go as far as to say shitty, but
I didn't say 5x5 was.
Right.
I said Nick's going to teach us how if you have a shitty product. So that's the.
Well, yeah, and it's like anything. It's where you start, right? It's not where we are today. But
right.
I think that's important to dive into.
That's exactly right. I didn't mean to put down 5x5, Nick. RB2B loves 5x5, and you know that. So, Adam, what are 3 things the audience is going to learn if they stick around until the end today?
if you stick around to the end of this show, you're going to learn why stopping development on your so-so product today could be the smartest strategic move, and how to reallocate that energy into crafting a singular, irresistible offer that closes deals faster than a perfect product ever could. Number 2, you'll get the precise framework for creating a mediocre product, great offer blueprint that allowed Nick to secure 150K ACV deals over and over and over again with ridiculous PMS, product market fit, while facing superior competitors like ZoomInfo and Apollo. And number 3, you will understand why clarity and simplicity are your greatest competitive advantages, allowing you to secure product market fit and predictable revenue in months, not years, by making your offer undeniable to customers.
All right.
Well, on the fractional CFO topic, one of the biggest mistakes we made when we were going through the process with the private equity was we had no CFO or bank in the process. So I think everything was still on like Google Sheets at the time. And when we completed the deal, one of the big things that was educated to me was the day they did the deal with us, there was already a financial arb to be done off our business by just how we calculate the books. I calculate the books very similarly to, I think, how you do, Adam, which is like cash flow.
Yeah.
Yeah. Am I making more cash this month than last month? When you get into private equity, there's EBITDA and adjusted EBITDA and performa adjusted runway EBITDA. And so there was a whole bunch of things we learned that's a fractional CFO type resource would have been very helpful.
Right.
For us.
Not the least of which was the person who bought you saying they would have paid you more.
That was good and bad.
Well, let's dive into it. We have a lot to cover here. So, Nick, first, just to give the audience context, can you give a brief overview of 5x5 and sort of the space that you play in?
Sure. So 5x5 is a data cooperative. Essentially, we are the data backbone to a large portion of the sales tech, martech, and ad tech industry. So these are companies that have built platforms where data is a critical component to their platforms working, like our B2B. All of these platforms generate some data on their own, but they need significantly more data for their products and services to work. And so they have to go and supplement that data. And so 5x5's grown relatively quietly, but quickly in the background, providing identity data to a large portion of this ad tech, martech, sales tech space.
And then I just want to reiterate, because Nick's one of our heroes, bootstrapped, over 20 million ARR, basically an inbound enterprise funnel for all intents and purposes, right? Like there was no real marketing effort. It was just like it got around that this is what you were doing and people started coming to you.
So, I mean, I don't think we sent a cold email till we were past 10 million in ARR,
Yeah.
to be honest. And even today, I would imagine well over 90% of the revenue we've generated is referral, kind of like, going to conference type lead generation.
And can we just spend like 2 minutes on this part of it? Because it's like, I mean, it's not the offer, it's bootstrapping, but like, I don't want to tell the whole story, but like you and Brian were like, okay, we could go raise money and buy a bunch of data, or we
Yeah,
could,
Five by
yeah,
Five was founded because I mean I grew up in the Bay Area, so I grew up all around the fundraising world and in Sand Hill Road and that whole street. So Five by Five was born out of this allergy to fundraising. So we had a different company before we founded Five by Five, and that company was in the MarTech sales tech space, and it needed a bunch of data. And so, Brian, in order to build the product we wanted, we would have had to have raised capital to get the cash to buy the data needed to build the product. And so, Brian, I had this idea of, hey, at this point, our company was generating some data. We knew other platform companies, these weren't data companies, these were platform companies that were also generating some data. And the thesis we had was, what if we do some bartering? We can improve each other's products, delay our funding round. And this was meant to be a side project primarily. Five by Five, the whole mission was Five by Five was to create a side project to delay the funding round of my main project.
yeah.
and
It's
and
interesting how that works sometimes, right?
yeah, and like a lot of people ask me this, how much energy should you put into something? It should be natural. So it
Yeah.
started off as 10 hours a week, and then it was 20, and or 10% of our time was in Five by Five, then 20, then 30. And then we started charging money for it.
Yeah.
Within like
Yeah.
45 days, we were doing more revenue than the other company in 2 years. So I
Yeah.
called up Brian. I said, are there more companies like this? And he goes, there's a bunch more. And I said, this is now our business.
Yeah.
So we have sunsetted for the most part the other business. We're able to do a small little sale of that business and use that as a bridge to fund Five by Five.
Yeah. I mean, dude, different way of getting there, but like retention.com started as a feature in my first company. Literally was supposed to grow that business. And there was so much demand for the feature and no one wanted the rest of the product. Similar thing, spun it out, punted the other one. And
Yeah, I feel for a
here we are
lot of
today.
founders where when you're bootstrapped, you have the flexibility to, and Adam, you felt this probably more than anybody, to pivot where it makes sense, or
Yeah.
or to run or channel your energy where it makes sense. And so I have a lot of friends and colleagues that have raised a bunch of money, and you're really stuck pushing potentially a boulder uphill
Yeah.
when there might be the better opportunity to right to the right of you. So if we had raised a bunch of money for that first company, if we had gone through and raised the capital to buy data, we'd still be working on that first company, almost
Right.
guaranteed. So that
It,
flexibility has been incredibly helpful.
there's a great book Adam actually recommended to me a while back. Talks a lot about this idea of revenue exploration. And it's like, if you're a founder, like that's really all you're trying to do is like try to grow revenue in whatever stream you can make it happen. You don't have to be so hard-headed and committed if you're bootstrapped, of course, to kind of what that initial vision is, because it's going to evolve over time. It has to. You're just going to keep learning and things are going to keep changing. So I love that. Okay, so let's talk about this offer thing. So like in the context of Five by Five, now I want to be very clear. When we talk about a so-so product, we're talking about early stage Five by Five. We are not talking about current day Five by Five, which is taking over the kind of the data, the data world. So I want to be very clear about that because it is no longer a so-so product by any means. But could you tell us, like, why was, when you were starting out, why did you feel that product was so-so? Can you tell us like what that offer was and sort of how it differed fundamentally from the ways that your larger data competitors were selling data?
Yeah. So when you're when you're bootstrapping a company, and you have well-funded competitors, trying to beat them, from my experience, trying to beat them with a better product is extremely hard and potentially very expensive, very risky. So when we were building 5x5 and we were talking to the market wasn't asking for, especially when we started, for better data. That wasn't the primary frustration the market had. There's definitely everyone would like some better data, but the main frustration the market had is these are product leaders who are building a significant part of their product off of this data. So there were three things that they were frustrated with in the market, and this gets back to where I think if there's two paths to bootstrap, this is probably one of the easier ones. But the three things they were frustrated on was the licensing rights. So when you're building a meaningful product off data, you need to make sure you've got incredibly strong access to that license rights to that data. The second thing was access. There was a lot of API driven workflows, and these bigger companies wanted to be able to host the data on-prem. And the third was pricing. So our big saying, especially when we started out, was everybody was annual, multi-year, we were month to month. And
Yeah.
someone would come to me and say, hey, if if I spent 100 grand with you, my point was that was a success problem. That means you made 12 individual decisions throughout the year. The reason why the offer was important is we didn't have to invest millions of dollars to build a product that competed with our competitors. We had to create a better licensing document, and then we had to create a better access model for people to access the data, and then we had to create a better pricing model. None of that was particularly expensive or time consuming. And so for us to get into market, we could have especially in the early days, a less effective product, but we were able to beat out our competitors by having a better business model and offer to the market. And so that was really how we signed our first probably 50, 60 customers until we eventually had a better product. And we used the capital from those initial customers to build a better product. And then we grew with a great offer and a great product. You can grow exceptionally fast. But I looked at the offer as a much easier way to get into market and bootstrap the company, or everybody talks about building a shittier product to some extent.
Yeah, there's this I remember in grad school there we had this actually it was a woman who wrote a book named Different, which is one of my favorite marketing books. And she was saying that one of the most underexplored pieces of the marketing mix is pricing. And it doesn't mean your price, like the dollar amount you're charging them. It means how are you extracting that price? What commitment are you giving to them? Are you going to give them a really sweet deal up front and then eventually lead into a higher ACV? And I think that's like a super important, kind of thing that you just brought up, where it's like just kind of exploring the model outside of the product itself to make it more enticing to a specific group of people.
Yeah, and think about how many people, and I'm sure Adam and Pete, you guys have been pitched often about how they say they're trying to build a better product than XYZ competitors in the space. And maybe it works, maybe it doesn't, but it takes many months and usually quite a bit significant amount of capital to be able to pull that off. The offer I found was just an exponentially simpler way to be able to get into market, way less capital intensive, and then it gives you time to build the better product. Versus there's a lot of people who have built decent products, and it takes a long time for them to find the offer. So that was one aspect. The other aspect was our competitors. So in order to build a data asset of any significant size to be able to power these platforms, our competitors had raised tens of millions of dollars, and they had to build a tremendous amount of infrastructure to be able to scrape this data, acquire this data. And quite a few of them had spent years building these data assets. The other thing we did is, so we had a better offer out to the market. We also had a better business model. It was really an execution model to get the data. So this thesis we had was there's all these companies out there that generate a little bit of data, not enough for their platforms to run on their own. And they need more data to be able to make their platforms work. But our thesis was if we get all these platforms that are generating a little bit of data to contribute in, we could build a much bigger data set that then everyone can get access to. And the business model is pretty straightforward in the standpoint of you pay X dollars if you want data, and if you contribute, that cost goes down. None of these companies actually sell data. So to them, a lot of this data they were contributing in was almost a cost function for them. They had to store the data and process the data. They don't sell it. They don't have sales teams to sell it. So when we gave them a vehicle to be able to contribute this data to offset their data cost, something they were already buying, they were running out the opportunity to be able to contribute in. And someone gave us an analogy. It's like I could put my recycling in front of my house and it could offset the cost of my mortgage. I don't sell recycling. I don't even know where to sell recycling. Sounds great. I'll put it in front of my house every week. We knew what to do with the recycling in this analogy. So we were able to build data sets at an exponentially faster rate than all of our competitors were, and effectively at a cost neutral rate. So it allowed me to build data sets that were competitive and starting to beat our competitors that had raised tens of millions of dollars from a bootstrap budget, because we had this execution flywheel effect. Every time we brought on a co-op member, we got more data. As we got more data, it was easier to bring on co-op members. So it created this flywheel effect. So we went from shitty offer or shitty product, good offer, to very quickly good product, great offer. And that's when Adam's been tracking me. That's when we really took off. And we've experienced for almost every year 100% plus growth when we got the two right.
And I also, to your first point about like, it's really hard for a company to win on product when you're going against an incumbent in like a mature space, right? Like probably it is full stop, but like sometimes you're just doing something that no one else is doing for whatever reason. Like our reason is always it's gray area. So like everyone's afraid to do it. And I'm like, is it legal? Yeah. Okay. Well, I'll do that. You know? So there's a saying that I agree with. It's like, if there's a space and there's a large entrenched incumbent, you need to be 10 times better than that incumbent to actually get people to switch to you, right?
Sure.
So getting a product 10 times better is unbelievably difficult, right? Getting an offer 10 times better is
So
not actually that hard, right?
So
like,
on that, Adam, so to get them to switch to use 10 times harder, I agree.
Yeah.
That wasn't our go-to-market motion.
No, exactly. Well, the other thing you do is the Clayton Christensen disruptive innovation. You go under to people that are not consuming from them.
Well, there's that. The other way we did it is, so when you're building a product that's dependent on data, you need your data supply chain to be really rock solid. Think of yourself, Adam. If you lost a few data feeds, that could be incredibly hurtful. So the way we came in is complementary. So we weren't trying to say, that was part of how we made our business model so complementary to our entrenched competitors that they didn't have to switch off them in the first year. That eventually, when we got better, they were able to switch off them, and then our ACV skyrocketed up because we were able to capture that budget. A big way we went into market is we didn't say, don't get rid of them.
Land and expand, right?
Exactly. Then we'll come in a business model that's cheaper, flexible, complementary. So then we didn't have to be 10 times better in the early days. So that was something that we found, especially when you have no brand and people don't know how to trust you, the complementary strategy can be an incredibly effective way to go ride shotgun with them. And then in year two, you can go and expand and get more of that budget. So that was something that really helped us in that first year, because it's incredibly risky for these big companies to build significant development off of data that from a company they'd never heard of. That was our biggest risk we ran into.
I want to get into like kind of more like the elements of these offers, right? There's a lot of variables that we can pull. I mean, it's really part storytelling and part, variable adjustment, right? So I'm curious, is there like a set of elements or even a single most important element that you found that separates an offer from an irresistible one compared to like a vague one? So is it pricing model like we talked about? Is it a guarantee? Is it something else?
So the quick answer is it depends on what the pain point is on the customer side, right? So from our side, the biggest pain point that companies were experiencing was actually in the licensing documentation itself. These big platforms had access to data, and those data contracts could be cut off with a 30-day notice from a lot of the big data suppliers at the time. So they were terrified. So one of the big things we basically came in is, as long as you're in good standing at 5x5, we're never going to cut you off. What was happening in the industry is a lot of the companies that were providing this underlying data started building competitive products to the companies they're providing data to and wanting to shut off their competitors. So we really took a Switzerland approach. And so like in terms of is it pricing? Is it the bundling? Is it the access? It depends on the pain point. So in our market, that was the number one pain point where we could come in complementary. So they knew we were almost like we were like the like the backup power generator to a lot of these businesses, and we charged accordingly. So we didn't charge like we were a first tier data provider. Now, fast forward, part of what helped our business grow up scale a lot was we eventually got the products good enough where we could displace and disrupt Atom in that point. But that took us almost 2 years to be able to pull that off. So I didn't have a better data set than probably a lot of our counterparts for 2 years, but we were still growing quite aggressively because these companies needed a backup generator to some extent. It was too risky for their business not to have them. The second we were able to become the primary generator, our business 3-4x.
Then it ripped.
And then it ripped. Exactly. So that's on one aspect. The other aspect on the business model was I looked at what was the number one reason my competitors were raising money for, and it was to get data. So the one of the biggest areas they were spending money was on investing in ways to get data. So we created a business model that allowed us to get the data without having to raise a bunch of capital. So we attacked it from two ends, Pete. There, pricing. The way we did pricing was just to make sure we priced ourselves, especially in that first 18 months, was we priced ourselves in a way to be complementary. So that was our biggest thing. Was we didn't come in and say, get rid of your provider, switch to us. What we came in and what the pitch is your data supply chain needs to be heavily invested in, and it needs to be very secure. And our ICP in the early days weren't startups, actually, Adam. We didn't go to the bottom and work our way up. We worked at kind of like, there were definitely startups, but we did really well in that middle market area where data supply chain security is an incredibly critical part to their business.
Yeah. And like a 500 employee company or something like that?
I would say we started in middle market in the MarTech sales tech world, not middle market in the general world. So that's kind of like that 200 to 500, like 100 to 500 employee range. I would say is kind of when that starts to be more important. The data supply chain aspect.
Dude, Jim has the best question ever. What were your hosting costs as this business grew? I think like half of the conversations we've ever had, you brought up your hosting cost.
Yeah. Well, so in the early days, they were quite subsidized through Amazon. We got very creative. We must have had near 7 figures of Amazon credits that we were able to figure out how to get. Now our hosting and data processing costs are meaningful 7 figures annually right now.
Yeah. What is it, like a petabyte of data a day or something like that?
That sounds directional. Yeah. So we're outside of people, data processing costs is our second largest cost for sure.
So when you say pricing to be complementary, well, first of all, I want to summarize something. So like, I love this idea. And if people watch the show enough, they'll realize that like virtually anybody we have on in any domain, it all starts from customer pain. Like, where do they live right now? Like, what is their current mindset? What's the current state of the art of the sort of world you're playing in and the world they're living in? Because you're not going to convince them they're somewhere that they're not, right? So what does that like pricing to be complementary look like? Like, is it being cheaper? Is it the fact that you didn't have long-term contracts? Yeah.
Part of it depends on theirs, right? So our big thing it's like a jujitsu to some extent, right? So our competitors were annual upfront. We were monthly contracts and monthly payments, right? So like we tried to make it as frictionless as possible where they could buy us both. So we had to learn what would allow those companies to buy both of us. In some cases, we wouldn't start charging for 4 to 6 months because they wouldn't be able to pay for us until that existing contract, they could renegotiate the existing contract, but we wanted to get integrated in. So from my experience, when you're bootstrapping, especially when you don't have an established brand, if there's a way to go complementary, they already are buying that thing. They already have budget for that thing, and if you can be complementary with the transparency, then I told them, I said, my goal is next year is to be the primary. So that's what I'm going to work closely with you for the next 12 months, is working right next to you to figure out how, when that data contract or that contract comes up for renewal, we're the primary and we'll give you a better rate. But then it created this working together aspect where we were working with them to eventually get the primary budget, versus I've seen a lot of colleagues, they're trying to get that primary or disruptive budget right off the rip. And the biggest competitor they usually have is people don't want to. It's inertia. People don't want to change it.
And can I give an unbelievable example of this happening to us? Like this complementary thing, because I think it's like helpful just to hear about it in different spaces. So retention.com sells to Shopify stores. We were doing website identity through third-party cookies, basically. It's exactly what our B2B does. So people would hit the site, we'd give them an email address, people would hit the site, we'd add people to their abandoned carts, but it was all third-party identity through the kind of like advertising network de-anonymization we do. This vendor called Black Crow figured out that if you laid down first-party cookies, it would do the same thing that we were doing with this third-party audience just as effectively, if not more, but it was a completely different audience and was lift 100% of the time. So without even talking to us, they would go into all of our customers. They just look at our fucking pixel on Built With, and they'd be like, we work with retention.com. That's how they open the pitch. We worked with retention.com. We will, like basically whatever they're growing your abandoned cart revenue, like we'll triple it and we'll just take an affiliate rip. Want to sign up? And like every single person was like, yeah. It was like literally you don't have to rip retention.com out because people liked it. Just an amazing, I love that strategy, like the use us to thing,
And then the goal is over time, then either between your core product or a bundle of products, you could potentially be the primary person in that
right
waterfall. So that's how we started. Fast forward to today, where a lot of our growth has come from, is so we have this data co-op model where basically we can acquire data at an exponentially faster rate than any one of our competitors in the space at a way more cost-effective rate. So we're getting data in faster than any one of our competitors. What's happened now is these companies we went to, or we came in as that complementary data set for one product. With AI, with the pressure from AI for a lot of these product leaders over the last few years, is they have way more pressure to innovate now. So these product leaders now are having more pressure to build more features and functionality, which requires more data. So what's now helped most of our growth come from is our innovative data acquisition model allows those product leaders to innovate their product roadmaps. And so we've grown with that. That wasn't an intentional thesis. So we've kept one of the things as we've grown 5x5 is we've been very close with our member base to figure out where their next set of pain points are. And this kind of like bundling one-stop shop offer has really helped us scale.
Can we get into so we're talking a lot about crafting a good offer. I'm sure you both have stories about and examples about a not great offer, because I think that comparison could be very helpful for the audience. So like, as an example, I think a vague offer is usually a pretty bad offer, or an offer that's just like, hey, here's 7 features. Do you want them? Right. So like, can we have a little bit of a contrast? Do you have an example of what and maybe it's the way you were positioning something before, or a competitor that we can leave nameless, maybe one of their offers? Do you have anything to contrast?
Well, I give some from our side because we get pitched on. So we've had companies come to us and let us know they could reduce our AWS spend by 50% if we move on to their cloud infrastructure. I would take an act of God for me to get off AWS. Even though it's cheaper, back to pricing, it's not complementary. So it would literally take almost an act of God for us to switch, even though people like the pricing is a no-brainer. That's meaningful money it can save us. It's just the business risk. I've got private equity involved, the security aspects. Like, it would take years for us to potentially do something like that, even with AWS outage. It's still not going. So that's where the biggest pains I've seen. We get pitched a new CRM platform, same kind of thing. The chance of us switching from HubSpot to a new CRM,
impossible.
So if someone wants to come to us, they basically have to show me, how do they make my HubSpot better? Complementary, right? And how does the pricing model fit in with my HubSpot pricing model, as an example? So that's where most of the startups I've seen fail, some I've started myself, is I'm asking someone to make so one of the things we talk about at 5x5 is we want to be able to make a decision quickly. So the goal is to make it really small and not painful. So if I need someone to switch something, that's a very big, painful decision. And more often than not, they're just not going to make the decision. So that's where I would say, Pete, most offers I've seen that have failed have come in where somebody's asking me to make a large decision, usually related to switching costs.
Yeah, and I want to highlight too, switching costs are not just monetary. Emotional switching costs are a huge component.
People's jobs are on the line. That's how people get fired, right? Like
Nobody ever got fired for buying IBM.
no, somebody switches their company over. Best case scenario, they keep their job. Worst case, they get fired, right? So like that's a lot of emotional weight that you're trying to convince them, and you're showing them features, right? On your product. So that was one of the big things we knew. Like there was a switching cost to us, and that would take years of trust to build. So it's not you can't work towards that. It's just that is the go-to-market motion. Is where I see, and then what happens is you end up raising a lot of money to build more features because you think features will help them switch over, and then you're stuck in this loop of trying to build more features to convince the market to switch.
Oh, wait,
And
we're
then
gonna
raise
get
more capital to build the features.
I really want to get into that because that Ann Vickman, who Adam and I have worked with for a very long time, she calls this the search for the magic noodle. And it's this thing that entrepreneurs fall into where they're like, oh, here's what someone said on a product demo. If we just had that, we could sell to all now this new group of people. And you kind of continue to search. So I want to talk about that. I do just want to highlight too something that was really important that you said, which is like, and maybe some of the audience has already learned this through experience or read it, but customers will not switch for a cheaper product. They'll switch for a better product and a far better product at that. That is not my own saying. This is like a long old marketing principle that
So Pete, on that though, I would say when it's something a company's invested a tremendous amount into, I wouldn't switch from AWS to a better product in a short amount of time. So it would take a long amount of complementary trust built with them to then switch. And I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs get stuck is they build something that is potentially better. The features are more robust, the thing is quicker. So then they go to the market and the market doesn't want to switch anytime soon. And there's these long extensive sales processes, and it takes 9 to 12 months to close a deal and all that. The suggestion that I've seen from this is coming, you're complementary to, especially if you want to bootstrap specifically, you're complementary with that big entrenched competitor, letting them know over time you want to get them fully baked in. That I've found to be exponentially more effective for bootstrapping.
That's really great. And yeah, I agree. Like, it can't just be better. It has to be like it has to be like transformationally better, where you're like, oh, this is unlocking a new thing that we didn't have before in a very meaningful way. And to highlight your point, if you're in a space like a data provider and you're not going the complementary route, or I think a CRM is the perfect example. Like I challenge anyone to go to a built out HubSpot instance and see how many things are already built there. See how many templates, see how many sequences, how many data points, how many connections to your platform and outside data points, how many workflows you have built. No one wants to rebuild that. It's going to take years, and it's a very painful process.
And Pete, you hit on something where in order to get someone to switch, it has to be transformationally better. I didn't have if you have that, awesome. Good, cheers. I didn't have that. We didn't have a transformationally better product. So the higher odds, and Adam, like I know with Bootstrap, you're always talking about odds to success. The higher odds I found to getting something into market that added value that people would pay for was a better business model. And then with that, it funded the transformationally better product there. So if you have the transformationally better product, like, you don't need to be on this podcast, listen to the podcast, just go sell. You've got it, right? For others, it's an odds game, right? So you're trying to increase your odds. And that's where I challenge on the offer side. It gives you a higher odds of getting into market than trying to find that transformationally better product.
Love it. Okay. So that's fantastic. So we kind of went through, just to summarize for the audience, what makes a great offer? You got to look at sort of the pain in the current world that your customers are currently living in and have something complementary, something that makes a lot of sense from them. That could come in the form of a pricing model, some sort of guarantee, a low-term commitment, but ultimately to making sure that your offer is to not replace something, replace a person, replace a piece of software. If you can be complementary and kind of slip into their system and be strategic that way, you can really win. What makes a bad offer, or a shitty offer, as our hook says, is if you're just trying to compete on price, or if you're trying to replace a really big legacy product that's really woven into the core of a business's systems. That's really, really challenging. So let's dive into this. I think when a trap people fall into, as we said, our friend Ann dubbed it the search for the magic noodle, is thinking that their offer is just one feature away from being an irresistible offer. But as we've kind of laid out during the show, they're separate. Like, your offer is not, you can have a great offer for a kind of a so-so or a simple product. So yeah, let's talk about that. Like, this kind of cycle that we all fall into of thinking that we're one feature away from, having everything we need. I know in RB2B's case, RB2B is a very simple identity tool. If you look at all the competitors to RB2B, they all started as an identity tool, but they've all become these like platforms, these workflow platforms, these sequencers, and they've just dug deeper and deeper into sort of the customer's like what now problem. Like, what do I do with this data? And RB2B, and been very outspoken about this, is remaining a very simple identity tool and not trying to chase all of those features. It costs more money. It distracts you. So let's get into that. Maybe Adam, you could kind of start with a little bit of rationale behind that approach, and then Nick can kind of chime in.
Yeah. So I think you captured a lot of it. Like, RB2B has been an interesting journey because everybody doing ABM thought that person level website visitor identity was going to solve all problems, and you would just be able to spam a website visitor and immediately book a demo on every single one, and all of your web traffic would be ideal customer profile. None of that has proven to be true. And to actually book demos off of a website visitor, you need to combine it with a bunch of other signals. So that's why everyone has, like, they're no longer talking about website identity, right? So meanwhile, if I'm honest with myself, we charge $220 a month. And as Pete identified incredibly early on in the RB2B journey, really our ICP customer is not booking demos with RB2B. They'd like to, but they're thrilled with being able to see who's on their site for whatever reason, right? Like, they're the CEO of an early stage startup and they just want to know that a customer's on the site, and they'll poke them. But if they don't book a demo, who cares? I'd still like to know and poke them. So really, like, this is kind of like another, like, all of our customers who have built all this stuff, they now charge 5, 10, 15, 20, $30,000 a year for this. Like, RB2B is free and you can get started in 3 minutes, and it is dead simple to start seeing leads in Slack, right? Like, so I think being careful about how I'm thinking about our customers' success, right? Like, it would be a huge pain for our customers to have to buy these other solutions. They just wouldn't do it. They're too expensive. So if I build all that stuff and then I have to have a sales force to sell it, I then have to charge annual deals to support all of this and like customer success to onboard it and stuff. So yeah, like this simple, as taking Nick's words here, it's like simplicity as a feature because of what we sell, who we're selling it to, and what everybody else is doing is like stopping me from adding features that I know would make the product quote unquote better. Like, of course you would like RB2B to like filter, research, add more contacts, and message all from one platform. But guess what? If it did that, I probably couldn't charge $220 for it on freemium offer. And 90% of my user base would be sending these messages and they wouldn't be booking demos, and they'd be like, your product sucks. It doesn't work. I'm not booking demos.
And I'll also add to that too. Now you're playing in a different market. Now you have to rediscover product market fit. And now you have to invest more into these new things that you just built. Now you have a whole other feature set that's going to have debugging and more customer issues. There's just like this thing you can fall into.
Yeah, we've looked at it from our side. We've had a lot of temptation to get into the UI API space over the years. and we've stayed incredibly firm. To your point, Adam, then you got to mess with more features and functionality and more support, and then all of a sudden those margins that you have start to get eroded at. Then you got to rediscover, product market fit and the messaging, and it's a lot, and so it's a lot of risk, and especially when you're bootstrapped, you can't swing and miss often.
Yeah.
Big dollars, right? So like that was one of the big things when we build new products at 5 by 5. I've already pre-sold the amount it will take to build. I've already pre-sold it.
Yeah.
So there's a very, if not zero risk by the time we built it, outside of a little bit of time. Because when we did our deal, our private equity deal, I mean, we were growing really fast, but every time we got a dollar in, we were putting it right back into the company. Like we kept investing in growth. So we didn't have the luxury to be wrong. So I think that's one of the other things, Adam, when you start getting hooked on these wide platforms, it takes a lot of money to keep them going.
Mhm.
And that's usually a lot. If you look at a lot of the companies that have large platforms, they usually raised a lot of money because they got to spend that money too. I found bootstrapping simplicity and focus is way better. And then when you go to build something, Adam, you and I've talked on this, and you and I've done this. We go to try to pre-sell it. If we can't pre-sell it, very low chance we build it
Yeah,
at this point.
absolutely. And by the way, speaking of APIs, if anyone wants to try to build stuff, so one of the plays I'm making with our B2B is like, I'm just going to try to be anything and everything related to the site visit and nothing else. So part of that is server side website identity. If anyone even knows what I'm talking about, check out that page. If you don't worry about it.
Um, love that. Someone also just kind of summarized Nick's point of like, he said, too bad you don't have VCs pushing you to do this so you can become unicorns, pushing you to basically become a more and more robust platform so that you can charge either more money to the people that you have or get more people in or charge more money to more people. So that way they can offset their portfolio. So that's where those the difference in incentives lies, and that's why the bootstrap versus VC combo is very prevalent on this show.
Okay,
Okay,
one thing that I had, so not to, we don't have to go deep on it because I don't know how relevant it is to the audience, but like I said, there's the bootstrap versus PE, that conversation, or bootstrap versus VC is brought up a lot. We did a private equity deal. That was like a whole different world. So I don't know if there's any interest in that vein, but that was a world I had not been exposed to up until 2 years ago.
I don't think a
Yeah,
lot
just
of
talk a little about it
yeah.
because I think the ideal path is kind of like what you did. It's like that, like it's just a yeah. Talk about it a little
Yeah,
bit.
amazing. I still have hair. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
So, an advisor gave me some context of how he described the difference between PE and VC, and then I could get a little bit into the why we did the deal because I do think there's some relevant sound bites for the group here. So, VC needs to be right, one, maybe two out of 10 times. PE's mindset is they don't get it wrong. So they're going to try to be right 8 out of 10 times. So it's a very different investment profile. VCs are trying to 10x plus on deals. PE is known for they want 3 to 5x return in 3 to 5 years, some version of that. So it's a very different investment profile, very different risk profile. There's different demands on the business. I was not prepared, I would say, for quite a few of these demands. I didn't know a lot of people that had done a private equity deal. So I've learned a lot. PE's, from my experience, is exponentially better at getting liquidity out of their investments. VCs tend to get to the next round. And the real liquidity event is like an IPO or a huge exit. PE have all sorts of debt vehicles, and there's a whole PE community of they sell deals to each other and stuff like that. So there's a lot faster, higher confidence path to liquidity in the PE world versus VC. But Adam, like one of the reasons why I didn't hold on to the meaningful part of 5 by 5 the way you had at our retention, our B2B, is we were running into a different issue, I think, than you were, Adam. But the thing that we kept running into is there's 3 things that I had learned you want to do with extra cash. And an advisor explained this to me. The first thing you want to do when you have extra cash in a business is you want to reinvest that cash to grow your business. The second thing you want to do with cash is you want to build reserves so your business can withstand market changes. If there's an opportunity, you have cash to be able to execute or or weather a storm. And the third is you want to be able to pay your shareholders and your employees and take care of the people that are involved in the company. Like in your case, Adam, with retention RBB, I think you've been able to accomplish quite a meaningful chunk of all three. At 5x5, no matter how fast we grew, when we were 2 million, I was like, when we get to 4 million, we're going to start working on bucket 2 and 3. Then when we got to 4 million, then I'm like, when we're at 6 million, we're going to take care of bucket 2 and 3. And what happened was we kept finding really interesting things to invest in. And so the company kept growing. And every time we'd bring $1 in, I would literally spend that dollar. Like, might as well not even send it to our bank account. I was so excited to spend it in some other way for growth. And so an advisor explained this to me about how we had some incredibly meaningful platforms that were built off us. And that was an irresponsible way to run the company. We were playing in a bigger pond than we had been expected. And so everything's good until it's not. Some sort of macro event happens, a competitor, a technology shift, et cetera. So the reason why, we did the deal we did was to take care of buckets 2 and 3. And that's where PE comes in a great spot. They help tremendously with making sure you have cash reserves. They don't we didn't need their money for bucket 1. We already had bucket 1 taken care of through growth. So that's VC. Sorry, for bucket 1. We did the PE deal mainly for bucket 2 and 3. We were able to build meaningful cash reserves. So 5x5 can be around for quite a significant amount of market changes. And then the third bucket, we were able to take care of our employees, shareholders, ourselves, et cetera. So that's something where I have a lot of friends where they come to me, and Adam, I've talked on this. They go to raise VC capital, thinking the VC capital will take care of bucket 2 and 3.
Yeah.
VC capital's for bucket 1. They don't want you to hold on to it, and they don't really want you to pay yourself much from that bucket.
Right.
So what I've seen a lot of entrepreneurs do, where they're in a somewhat similar position to maybe me, where the business is cranking, they go to get VC money because they're hoping finally I'll have money in the bank and I can pay myself a good amount of capital. No, the VCs effectively force you to spend it. PE is okay with keeping money in the bank, and they're okay with secondary. And they want the business to be profitable. So that's a mistake I've seen. That was a big reason why we did the deal, is we were having a tough time filling up buckets 2 and 3, and we almost went VC route. Adam was to go do like a big Series A, put a bunch of money in the bank, et cetera. And as we know, they would have pushed us to probably build platforms and features and all sorts of stuff, right? So I think that's as those companies start to get in that 5, 10, 15 million ARR range, and they want to start filling up that second and third bucket, I highly recommend either cash flowing like you did, Adam. That's one way to do it. And if you don't have the ability to easily do that, like I didn't, then that's where private equity, I think, comes in, and it can be extremely helpful. VC, though, I think the big mistake is that people are always feeling they can fill up those second 2 buckets with VC money.
Dude, what a chat, Nick. You did not disappoint. This was awesome. Thank you very much. Where can people find you if they want to reach out and say what's up?
Yeah, they can email me directly. Just it's nick@5x5coop.com. So you can put that in the chat. And they can go to our website too.
If anybody wants to trade
and to be clear, there's 2 things I'd love to help people on. If there's anything 5x5 related, always great to chat on that. And then I've been an entrepreneur since I was 10 years old. So I love helping entrepreneurs. I've had pretty close to the majority of the types of journeys, from bootstrap failing to fundraising failing to PE execution. So there's a lot of different things I could give experience feedback on. So either soundbite would love to support on.
Sweet. Well, thank you very much. And yeah, man, we're going to wrap it there. And then next week, I got Tommy Clark, my original LinkedIn guy from when I had 0 followers to 20,000. And the big taboo about Tommy is he's a ghostwriter. So we're going to figure out how he does this for people. And yeah, come join to see how I got started on LinkedIn. Nick, you're the man. Thanks a lot. Pete, another great episode. And by the way, admin note, people were asking, we started a new YouTube channel for the show because I'm making other types of videos on my channel, like related to RB2B. That channel is going to be live starting next week. So hang tight. We're going to get all the old episodes up.
And they're going to be edited better. They're going to look.
Yeah, they're going to be edited way, way better. We're working with this guy, Samu, who's incredible on YouTube.
Fantastic.
Cool. All right.
We'll
Thanks, everybody.
Next week.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.